I have to preface this video by saying that I was raised on a mixture of Native American and Eastern Indian philosophies. So I'm more familiar with Native American Hopi mythology and Eastern Indian stories about Arjuna and Krishna, for example, than anything biblically oriented or more Western oriented. So I grew up believing that what we all are really are souls having a temporary physical life experience, and that we have some vague idea or control over when we pass. I've heard people talk about life scripts, and that concept is a little too detailed for me. But I do believe we come into physical life with a general, sort of a general plan. And so I used to believe, for most of my life, I believed that death was a decision, even an unconscious one, on a soul level. And then I realized that I was a medium, and I began developing that skill deliberately. And now I don't know what to think because I've connected with a handful of people in spirit. I've done somewhere between 600 and 700 readings for people. And I've connected with a handful of people in spirit who have expressed surprise at their own passing. And I don't know what to think about that. Because and a subset of those people who have expressed surprise at their own passing have shown me, for example, in great big letters, great big all capital letters, as big as my head, the word accident. And I know when they show me that, it's because someone here is dwelling on their passing and thinking or saying things like, well, if I had done this, then they wouldn't have passed, or if this had happened, then they wouldn't have passed. And they're like, no, this was an accident. So no one's at fault, right? And so I wonder now if we agree to a degree of randomness when we come into physical life, because nothing is set in stone. We have free will, right? So I think, for example, if you come into life intending to be a doctor and you get here and you have experiences and you change your mind and you think ministry might be the way forward for you, that randomness allows changes in course. But I also wonder if that randomness could explain being knocked out of the game unexpectedly, for example, because I have definitely had people express surprise at their own passing. So I don't know what to think about that. Anyway, many people in spirit have conveyed to me their moment of passing, what was happening to them as they were passing. And so the most significant thing that I want to say about that is probably the most serious thing to say is that I've been shown a lot of really gruesome deaths. And every single one of them, without exception, has shown me that they struggled out of their bodies. They did not suffer out of their bodies. And how they show me that is this: I get this dual thing at the same time. It's a dual image of myself struggling out of an overly tight wetsuit on the beach, and a butterfly struggling out of a cocoon. And they always show me that when someone here is dwelling in a bad way on, like, worrying or convinced that they were suffering as they passed. And I know people suffer at the end of their lives. I've seen that happen to my own loved ones. But after they pass, no one has characterized their passing as a bad thing or as suffering. So there's that. One young man that I connected with, young man in spirit, who had been burned over most of his body but didn't pass right away, showed me himself sitting next to his own body in the hospital room and like holding his own hand. And there was a woman there crying and upset, saying, please don't leave me, please don't leave me. So I couldn't tell if he couldn't get all the way back in the body or if he was reluctant to, but I knew he was waiting for that body to stop working. But again, there was no suffering, terrible thing. He was just patiently waiting there for it to be impossible to return. So that was a very interesting one. Another man that I connected with who had been in a car accident, who passed while they were waiting for the ambulance to show up, gave me this feeling of slipping out of his body. And I've had that a few times, where if you can imagine, if you're hanging by your fingertips on a cliff and you're just slipping and you can't hold on, that's what it was like, except that he made me feel like he was slipping sideways. And I've gotten that a lot. It's either gracefully moving sideways or slipping sideways, but it's never forward or backward or up or down. It's when people have conveyed to me how they leave or when they leave their bodies, it's always this sideways motion. Don't know what that's about, but I think that's interesting. The people who have, the way I get that sense of being surprised is they make me feel startled, and I know that they're on the other side. A few have actually had me say the words, "That did not just happen." And so, for example, one young woman I connected with was crossing the street in a crosswalk on the green. It was her turn to cross, and a car hit her from behind. And witnesses said, told her mother, who was my client, said that she never saw it coming. It happened so quickly. So it was evidential for the mother when I said this person did not know that they were passing. And she was one of the ones who said that did not just happen. So there's that randomness to life. What else was I going to say? I've gotten several people who were ill for quite a long time before they passed. So they knew they were going to pass because of how sick they were. And these are actually, some of these have been some of the nicest connections, because what they've shown me is they're in a hospital bed or in some kind of hospice bed, and they look over to the side. I just realized they look over to the side, and there's a parent or a grandparent who had preceded them in death. And there's this like this reunion, this really huggy, wonderful reunion. But that's also how they know that they've passed, because they're suddenly aware of this loved one who had passed before them. So, those are kind of cool. A few have made me feel, so the very worst that I've been shown is that struggling feeling that they struggled out of their bodies. Most are quite neutral about their passing. Some of those wonderful reunions, a few have made me feel relieved. People who were trapped in their bodies, either from stroke or something like ALS, I've gotten this wonderful sense of freedom to be out and mobile again. And a few have also, and this is true even of like 90-year-olds who passed, a few people have conveyed to me that they expected more time, or that they wanted more time. Like I could have used a little more time. Like even 90-something-year-old people feel like they were taken before their time. Sometimes they've given me that, even though I can tell they're quite old. I still will say to the client or the sitter, I feel like I went before my time, even though I'm really old. And they're like, yeah, she was 93. So that's what I have to say about the moment of passing, and my thoughts on the randomness that is life. Somebody did put in a question in one of the videos, in the comments of one of the videos, that they are fairly new to this and they're getting more than one communicator at a time, more than one person in spirit. So I'm going to talk about that in my next video. So tune in for that. And until then, please put your questions or comments below, and I'll try to do a video to respond to your comments or your questions. Thank you.